Well, there is another ARC, the Appalachian Regional Commission, and it's my honor to introduce Gayle Conley Manchin, who was sworn in just this past spring as the 13th federal co-chair at ARC and the first co-chair from West Virginia. She was nominated by President Biden, and she works with 13 governors in the ARC region to build community capacity to strengthen economic growth throughout the region. I think many of us are familiar with ARC. Ms. Manchin is a graduate of West Virginia University, was an educator starting out in Marion County school system, was on the faculty of Fairmont State University, and was director of the university's first community service learning program. She directed their AmeriCorps program. I think many of us are familiar with that. So we have lots in common with her. And implemented a statewide initiative, the West Virginia Partnership to Assure Student Success. She served as West Virginia's First Lady from 2005 to 2010, was a member of the State Board of Education, serving her last 2 years as president. She was chair of the board for Reconnecting McDowell, which is where we got to know her better, which is an American Federation of Teacher initiative that serves that part of West Virginia. And she served as cabinet secretary for the West Virginia Office of Education and Arts. Of course, where that brings us to today, we've asked her to share where ARC is headed and how we might better partner. Her top priorities are to support the creation of economic opportunity in the region, to improve broadband access and other critical infrastructure in our communities, and to address the region's opioid crisis. So please join me in welcoming Gayle Manchin.
Jim, thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be with all of you at your conference today, and to sort of reconnect, excuse the pun, with you and Vonda and so many people from Fahe that were such a help to reconnecting McDowell with our work in Southern West Virginia when we were trying to build housing complex for teachers, to provide affordable housing for teachers and any professional individual coming to work in McDowell County. And so my first introduction to Fahe was really as the Federation of Appalachian Housing Enterprise. As you helped us look at the land, get the property, and then look at that, the building on the property, was it going to, could we renovate it, restore it? And we decided pretty quickly that was not the answer, that we needed to demolish and start from scratch. But you were just with us every step of the way, helping, supporting, and guiding us. And, you know, we have continued to always feel you were our partner in making the Renaissance Village a reality. And so I understand the power of the work, your thoughts around collaboration and how that works. And so it's such an honor for me to be able to be here today representing the Appalachian Regional Commission. As you said, the first West Virginian to serve as the federal co-chair, but certainly understanding that ARC is built around partnerships and collaboration, just as Fahe is. And what I've been very pleased to learn from looking at what you're doing and also watching the video, what an amazing video, is that when you talk about building your dream, again, I'm not playing on a pun, but you are building lives and dreams. It's not just about buildings of brick and mortar, but it's how you build lives and fulfill those dreams. And so I am so happy to be here today to talk about what we're doing at ARC, knowing what you're doing at Fahe and how we might in the future be better partners in expanding the parity of the Appalachian region. And so from your video, so many of the items that you touched, but certainly the last part of that video, we know, as you know, the challenges that we face in our communities, certainly the setback from the COVID-19 pandemic. So the infrastructure issues, but also what we became so aware of was the impact of substance abuse disorder. And, you know, it was terrible. It was a pandemic before COVID, but COVID really exacerbated the issues before us. People that were suffering just continued to suffer more. Of course, what we know, both Fahe and ARC, is that Appalachians are strong, and we are able to work together, and with the right help and support, we can bring people into addiction recovery and to where they are not just surviving, but they are thriving in a life. And we know, of course, as you do, that substance abuse disorder is a workforce development issue. It affects our friends, our families, our neighbors as they struggle to, in addiction recovery. They face many barriers to entering or re-entering the workforce. The industry is a little, they're hesitant to hire sometimes. And so when they can work with agencies like Fahe and ARC, then that really brings those two together. Here at ARC, we have the Inspire grant program that helps address the problem. And in 2021, just this year, we awarded more than 9.4 million to 30 projects across Appalachia that supports innovative efforts to establish community-based recovery ecosystems to save lives and strengthen the region. So just as you have projects going, we have been working in projects also. I was honored to see a couple of these projects in action during my recent visits to Maryland, Ohio, and North Carolina. In Western Maryland, I visited Brooks House, which is a sober living facility for women in recovery. The women work at that facility as they live there to make delicious chocolate. We have brought some home with us, and they also run a dog spa. So ARC helped provide funding for their chocolate production hub, which helps support their social enterprise program. The chocolate and the dog spa business not only bring in revenue for Brooks House, but it gave the ladies living there both a purpose and also started teaching job skills. You know, the word purpose is one we hear often as we speak to both program managers and beneficiaries of our substance abuse disorder projects. And one of the things that we hear again and again, as you know, is that recovery is not an event. It is a continuum. It doesn't stop when someone leaves rehab. These people need ongoing support. The last thing we want them to do is to return to their old friends, their old lifestyles. So we have to provide that support system of new people that they can identify with, that they feel like that they can lean on for support. And employers, working with employers to help them understand that they are also a support system for the workers, the new neighbors, for the people in this workforce situation. And so we know that at the end of the day, it really is all about people. You know, getting the court system involved, because all too often things are totally disrupted when the people with substance abuse, who literally are victims, not criminals, are imprisoned or put in jail when literally working with abuse centers, these people can be saved, as we saw again in your video. You know, it's important for us to remember as we look at how we can work together that getting people to think regionally beyond our own state or county lines is the more positive way to assure success as a whole. Collaboration has always been that touchstone of the work at ARC as we have invested in the future of Appalachia. And so we appreciate the opportunity to work with all of our nonprofit leaders here today, who really are the boots on the ground to improve our region. You know, my background is education, but and we know that it is the foundation of all economic development, vitality, whatever we're doing to rebuild throughout the Appalachian region. We know at the end of the day, it begins with education. When people say when does it begin? I say at birth, and it shouldn't end until we die. We should live a life of lifelong learning, and that's what we do, and that's what we support here at ARC, continuing to help people to grow and learn, not only outside of our facility, but also throughout the ARC region. You know, we are 13 states and 420 counties. We stretch from southern New York down to Mississippi. And while we have generally been identified as 13 states, I would like to begin to think of us more as one large region, thinking of us again as 420 counties, a big region that if we work together, we can find ways to build parity and equity across our region. And we know, just as it is with Fahe, that it's the collaboration that begins fundamentally at the grassroots level. It begins at the local level, then to state, and then to federal. And that's how we get the job done. That's how ARC has gotten the job done since 1965, when we were created. And we believe that decision-making is shared equally. We do not go into entities or areas and tell them how to spend money or hand out money. We know that we have to work in concert, letting local governments and communities decide exactly what their challenges are, prioritize, and work with community leaders in the private sector to come up with a solution to get people and business to buy in to their project. And then again, ARC comes in as that third leg. You know, one of the ways that speaking of nonprofits, one of the ways that ARC partners with entities in helping it to thrive was the creation of the Appalachian Nonprofit Resource Center, and which we help nonprofits navigate through and beyond the COVID-19 crisis. So it kind of grew out of a crisis. It's one of those silver linings that because of COVID, this Nonprofit Resource Center was created. This program offers expertly curated resources on financial management, sustainable operations, fundraising, and other tools that are totally free of charge. And I'm proud to say that because it was a success, so much of a success, that they are offering a second round of coaching this fall. For the next phase of Appalachian Nonprofit Resource Center, we've added a new topic called board development, which, as all of us know that have been involved in the nonprofit world, sometimes board development and getting the right board in place is one of the toughest jobs that we do. So it's so important as we look at all of these different levels of how we support Appalachia in building economic resilience and adapting to the needs of the community during this particularly hard time, is looking at exactly what they have faced. And what we know is that what they have faced in trying to chart out their own destiny, and there are the resources that they found they were so much without during COVID. And one of those big issues was, of course, broadband. Children were sent home from school and they couldn't attend school virtually. Adults were sent home to work and they couldn't work virtually. People were told not to go to doctors' offices or hospitals, and yet they had no way to reach into healthcare through telehealth because there was no broadband in their areas. And so again, we come back to this whole topic of equity and how our zip code should not and cannot define our destiny. And so we are passionate about helping people build community capacity. And as we looked at the money that was coming down and is coming down from the federal government to our local communities and municipalities, we know that we are in a unique position to support capacity building efforts so communities can best utilize the American Rescue Plan Act and get the biggest bang for their buck. And so early next year, we'll be launching the Appalachian Community Capacity Building Pilot Program. And this program will consist of 3 elements. First, the creation and rollout of trainings designed for local development district and local elected officials. You know, when you look at these little communities, there's very few of them that have development directors or strategic planners. They've never had money before. And so this is one way that we feel we can be very beneficial. Secondly, we can help provide vendors that will provide technical assistance services to local governments that want to strategically plan out, maybe joining with communities on either side of it, maybe joining as a county effort. And finally, the third way is facilitation of the ARPA best practices, starting among our local development districts. Through this community capacity building pilot, ARC seeks to help communities across Appalachia make once in a lifetime investments. You know, this is an opportunity to do things we've never had the money to do before. But it also is an opportunity to encourage our communities to work together, to cross party lines, county lines, and to look even further into crossing state lines at bigger opportunities. You know, I really believe that if we don't take advantage of this opportunity at this time, we have lost it forever. I don't think it will be here next year. I think it calls upon us and it calls upon you as Fahe to look at how we can be that model at the higher level of how we could partner together to help regions within the ARC be better partners with each other. You know, one of the ways, Fahe is very aware of this, is our Power Initiative that touches upon the big issue of coal impacted communities, which we all know how that has destroyed communities and lives through Southern West Virginia, Eastern Kentucky, Southeastern Ohio, Southwestern Virginia. We show a large area of coal impacted, heavily distressed counties, a group of counties that's one of the largest in our country. And so the Power Initiative is one example of how we have been trying to address those issues. So last week, we announced our largest power grant package since the initiative was launched in 2015, more than $46 million 57 projects received power grants, and which will certainly help retain more than 9,000 jobs, attract nearly 519.5 million in private investments, and be matched by over 59 million in additional public and private funds across the region. We believe that power grants can result in economic transformation and providing hope to communities around Appalachia. You know, we say that with what we have done, the money we are giving and have given certainly have helped keep communities alive. We're hoping that we can better help them to thrive in the future. And we're so proud that Fahe has helped facilitate meaningful power projects that are resulting in economic transformation across the region. With the latest power announcement, Fahe will be partnering with Community Ventures Corporation to provide 60 counties in Eastern Kentucky, will be spanning both 60 counties in Eastern Kentucky and West Virginia. And that is exactly what we're talking about, that cross the state line partnership. If you live the boundary between West Virginia and Eastern Kentucky, you would not know where to lay the boundary back down. We're talking about the same geography, the same demography, the same topography, and the same challenges that face both of these areas. And so this program will provide opportunities for training and paid internships, again, for people in addiction recovery. What a great use of combining both money from power to crossing over into our substance abuse. It also helps combat the stigma that many employers have about people going through recovery. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. So grants like this, as we work together, help change the minds of people and help bring that support effort to where we're all working together in a much more productive way. Another way, when we talk about institutes and trainings that we do, we have the Appalachian Leadership Institute, where we train emerging and established leaders to help advance economic vitality in Appalachia. The Appalachian Leadership Institute is an annual 9-month-long training opportunity where a diverse group of 40 fellows are equipped with skills and expertise to create project proposals, apply for grants, and create long-lasting economic development strategies. But perhaps the most important part of our Appalachian Leadership Institute is that it creates a network of Appalachian leaders who stay connected, who continue to reach out to each other, to share ideas, to reach out for support, to ask questions, because they now know they have found a group of peers that they can rely upon to help build better opportunities in their own communities. Because while we know that we all are unique in our own particular special ways, we also have much in common. And it's these commonalities that we need to really use and bring forth that can help us solve the challenges that we face. None of us can do it alone, not individually, not as a small group. It's putting all of our heads together. It's talking about the power of numbers, the power of ideas and best practices, and how we share those, and how we understand that if something good happens in your community, it's going to help our community. You know, when we think about those most distressed counties through Southern West Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio, and Virginia, think about how if something really good happens in Eastern Kentucky, that's a blessing to West Virginia in terms of economic development. The same goes for West Virginia and Ohio. We have to learn that when we benefit, we all benefit. When we grow, we all grow. And so the more that we can bring these ideas together, the more that we can share those ideas among not only our own counties, but among our states, is going to mean a much greater success, particularly in this year, where there is so much more money available at the federal level. This sense of partnership and working together is going to be more critical than it's ever been. You know, we may not succeed in everything that we try to do, but if we don't try, shame on us. So I just want to say again to Jim King, Vonda, all the wonderful, wonderful people that I've had the privilege to work with in Fahe. It is a pleasure and an honor to be with you this morning. It brings back great memories, but what it brings back more importantly is that how much our work mirrors each other, how much our mission and purpose are shared. And so I look forward to the opportunity to continuing to work with you and find ways that we can be bigger and better partners, which will, at the end of the day, we know, make our entire region stronger. Thank you so much. And Jim, if there are any questions or issues that you would like to bring forth, I certainly would welcome them at this time. But thank you so much.
You would think I'd be really, really, really good at Zoom by now, Gayle, but you know, it's still like, where's the button? I can't find my picture on the screen. No, thank you so much. I think that the part of your message being about regional mindset, I do think you've got time for questions. I think we wanted to open that up for folks. You did mention the ARPA. Do you know what the timeline looks like that in terms of like what the release looks like?
I'm not sure what the time of release. I think some of the money has already been released. I do know that there's not a pressure on doing something immediately. I think they have till 2024 to make decisions. And then I think they have till 2026 to actually spend the allotted money. So there is time for planning and strategically thinking about how we prioritize and get the biggest bang for our buck. I mean, ARC can provide some matching money, but if communities and counties will come together, I mean, whether it's a water system, a sewer treatment plant, broadband, whatever it is, when you think about doing it regionally, it seems to me that becomes a more efficient and effective way of doing it than trying to do each little community individually.
You talked a little bit about the opioid crisis and recovery being really important to what you're thinking about. And if I caught you correctly, also mentioned that that how we tackle that issue has a direct relationship to workforce development. What, if I heard you correctly,
Yeah.
What seems particularly promising to you, and like what are you hoping would go to scale around addressing that?
Well, I think it's so critically important early on in substance abuse recovery when individuals make that choice to go to an addiction center, they're in the right mindset, that is a critical point to start directing them into some job skill training. Sometimes that can be done on site, as it was at Brooks Place in Western Maryland. Where you start getting these people involved in some type of training and some type of effort, because you know what it does, it gives people a sense of purpose, a purpose to live, a system of hope that if they can overcome this addiction, there may actually be a place for them in society. And then working with career tech training centers, community colleges. There are so many opportunities out there available that if we can, again, not be a silo, if we can be a continuum where the rehabilitation center, the educational training center, and at the end of the day, the job can work together, we have a much better chance of literally not just saving that person, but giving that person a life that they can thrive and grow and become, where they begin to feel that they are actually contributing to their community and to their own quality of life. So important.
I think we had the video from Addiction Recovery Care earlier, and if you caught some of that, you saw that a couple of our members are doing exactly that kind of work, which is we're building homes, teaching people construction trade, which is one of the big gaps in for employers right now is skilled workers, and so it really does seem like a great match. I am not in a good spot, Vonda, to probably monitor the chat here. So I don't know if somebody else is going to step in and want to read a couple of these off. And while you wrap your mind around that, I'll ask one more question to Gayle myself. I don't know how to get off of this camera either. Throw a sheet at the camera and run away. So you've touched a couple of times on the regional, and of course, in partnerships and collaboration, and certainly that's where our heart is as a collective. You've got almost 55 Fahe members here across all these states, and we're really good at working together and getting things done. I think one of the things I've learned, though, is that takes time and it takes its own investment. Have you given any thought to how to support that early stage of collaborative work? Because it takes people's time to work together. When I think about like maybe putting something together with, say, community college system and some of our members, or broadband is another, it just takes a lot of front end work. Have you given that any thought yet? How you would maybe sort of as an investing early stage?
I have been giving it a considerable amount of thought, as well as the staff here at ARC, because they realize kind of the urgency of this issue. Because while we talked about the ARPA money being, it's kind of coming out and you have some time to plan, this bigger money that's available at the federal level is on a much tighter timeline. So I have reached out. Of course, my commission is composed of the 13 governors in the Appalachian region. And so I reached out to the governors that, when I talk about that heavy distressed area that's right in the central of the Appalachian region, right there in the center, Kentucky, West Virginia, Ohio, Virginia. I talked to the governors there and their alternates, the people that they have appointed to be their spokesperson, to say, can we have a joint Zoom? Can we meet virtually? We know that we're still not doing too well meeting in person, and sometimes virtual enables more people to be at the table. Can we just have a meeting and talk about what this might look like? If we could come up with 3 or 4 really big projects that would impact the whole area, not just one state, not just 3 counties, but would literally impact this entire heavily distressed area, we might really be able to start transforming it, turning it around. And so that's my thought process right now, is to bring the states together, And they are bringing some of their movers and shakers. As we know, Jim, it's not about you, it's not about me. It's about the people on the ground that know exactly what has to be done to make something happen. And so we need to get them in on the conversation, because I believe that if Ohio thinkers and West Virginia, Kentucky, and Virginia thinkers get together, they'll find that they share a lot of the same creativity, ingenuity, and can come up with what would some of these big projects look like, and how would we really impact these most severely cold, distressed areas in ways where you have communities. Jim, you know, from McDowell County, you go to a county where people have lost hope.
Mhm.
They see no future. They see no future for themselves or their children or families, and that's heartbreaking. And so we need to think about what can we do that would really impact. Now, obviously, affordable housing is one piece of the picture, but it's not any one thing. It's how do we recreate, diversify what people have been doing, look at what kind of training and bring education in. Now, right now, my thought is we're talking to the thinkers and doers at ground level, and then talk about how we coordinate that with education from K-12 through, you know, post-secondary at every level.
I think that's great. And in any way that you and your team can help coordinate bringing us all together. We've had similar conversations with past commissioners that never quite sort of got over that bar, but I think, you know, you could do it. I really do believe that. And we sure would like to be
Jim, we can do it.
Yes. You can call us together though.
That's it. We can do it.
Yeah. We sure want to be part of that. I'm going to invite Dwayne Neely to come in. They've been collecting questions and if I could just stay on Spotlight as well, that I think that might be great. Can we do that?
All right, Jim. Sounds good. Thanks, Jim. Ms. Manchin, thank you so much for your time today. Karen Jacobson and Randolph County Housing Authority in Elkins they're a recipient of the Inspire Planning Grant. So they're excited about the work, really excited about it. So good. We do have a question from our Josh Stewart. He's talking about in Congress, legislation right now in Congress proposes $1 million increase to the ARC budget. If that becomes reality, do you have a vision of how ARC would distribute that?
Well, we're trying not to get the cart in front of the horse, but yes, we have thought strategically, if we were fortunate to get this extra money, it's certainly how we would invest it, and how our 13 states we would apportion, maybe thinking about some more incentive type grants for all of our 420 counties. So we are thinking about it, but nothing definite until we know that's. We do believe though that we certainly at any level would have as much money as we've had in the past, and probably a little bit more. But whatever it is, it will be putting it out there to how we can again just continue to better serve our entire region.
All right. There's another question. This one's from Karen Jacobson, and it revolves around community colleges systems in rural communities. She's talking about Elkins is an hour and a half from the closest community college. Is there any influence ARC can have on community college systems so they can better serve the rural areas?
Well, in one sense, I've always thought that West Virginia was very fortunate in the fact that we have small colleges sort of strategically located all over our state. But she's right. There are a deficit now with our community colleges. But I think with virtual schools, I think with career tech centers in our counties, many of our career tech centers offer community college courses. They work collaboratively, or they should be. And I think that, again, we need to reach out where we have schools, where we have buildings that have educational facilities. Then we need to be sure that we're sharing those facilities, either through the community college, the four-year college, again, career tech training programs that can give you certifications, internships. So I don't think we lack facilities in any of our states, but probably what we do lack is the incentive to be sure that we're using them effectively at all times. You think about our career tech centers that our high school students use until 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon. Well, then what about from 4 to 8 in the evening, where adults could be come in and being trained? Or returning students coming back to be retrained. We just have to, we have to think more strategically and how, working together, we use the facilities that we have to better serve our communities.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else have questions at this time?
Dwayne, this is Angela Stevens. I think one of the only other questions I saw in the chat was regarding match, and how that sometimes that's often such an issue for nonprofits or communities to submit applications just because of the match requirement. And so that might be something that just to touch on here, but it's probably a larger discussion, but just wanted to make sure I made that comment since it was in the chat.
You were kind of, I didn't hear you real clearly. I'm sorry.
There was a comment in the chat about the match requirement that's there for applications, and sometimes when nonprofits and communities struggle sometimes with the match requirement. So that was just a comment that was noted.
Yeah, match, I think, is always, it's always about money at the end of the day. But as you look around at either your local county funding, state funding, then ARC can be matched for other grants. So you can use ARC funding to match with other grants that you might be writing as well. Sometimes, again, that's what we talk about our community capacity building program, is just having that technical assistance that sort of reaches out and helps you see how to put funding together and how in-kind funding can be counted as a match. So certainly don't hesitate to reach out to ARC if you feel like you just need some technical assistance in how to start putting that money together.
This is David Lawless. It sure is good to have a West Virginian in your position, but with our kind of dysfunctional government, more or less at the congressional level, this emphasis on doing something in local communities to make them stronger, I think is so clearly important right now. We haven't put enough emphasis on that. Do you see a way that Fahe and you could work, like you have a member group in an area where we have a grant coming to a local community to increase its capacity? It would really be good to figure out a way to do partnerships in that area.
Oh, absolutely. It's critical. We have to build from the community out. You can't just put a great big, you can't come in and just put a great big factory somewhere and think, okay, we've helped the community. You have to begin at each of these at the community level. And that's where entrepreneurship, encouraging local people to start little businesses, and one encourages another, and how we encourage that building at the community level, strengthening. And yes, again, we go back sometimes to affordable housing. And if you're going to try to build a community, where do people live? How do you build the community? And so there's certainly ways that Fahe and ARC can work together in looking at, but you build from the bottom up. You don't start at the top and then think that everything is going to build in between. The foundation starts at these local communities. The more you strengthen them, then you strengthen your county, you strengthen your region. But I do encourage that small communities should reach out to each other and say, how can we share information, money, ideas, particularly for things like broadband, where you're trying to improve your entire region. And I think sometimes you just get a better bang for your buck in reaching out to that last mile, particularly in something like broadband. You need to have a lot of community and county support around that for providers to continue to go out to that last mile.
I think we have one final question. This revolves around housing. With housing been such an essential part of all the goals, I know that in the past there was a lot of, ARC had grants they could help nonprofits who were partially, to build housing or rehab of housing. Is that something that ARC may be able to do again with this money that's coming in?
Well, I think that this is going to be a critical part of when we talk about infrastructure and revitalizing communities. It absolutely is going to be around how we rebuild, build, renovate. You look at these little communities where buildings have been boarded up for years. That, how do we go about rehabbing to create a space for an entrepreneur to open a business and bring back a community? I think it's absolutely a great partnership because it will become, as it already is, a critical issue. If you are telling people you want them to come to your community to live, work, play, raise your family, then you've got to offer them a good, affordable housing in order for them to do that. And you've got to offer them the internet. They have to be able to connect to the world, to go to school, to go to work, whatever they need to do. So it's never just one entity, but it is that blend of how do you work together to kind of bring all these things to start happening at the same time.
All right, we have a direct question from Lindy Turner, who looks to be not in her office today in clinch foul.
No, and I'm sorry, I'm on my phone. Can you hear me, Josh?
Yes, I can hear you. I wish, you know how people always say, I wish you were here? No, I wish I were there.
I wish you were here too. I'm pretty sure we could fix a lot of the problems in the world. So I am on vacation, but I felt this session was important enough that I wanted to make sure that I sat in. I appreciate all your comments, and I guess I really have more of a comment in reply. And local government, state government, clearly government is critical in many of particularly the infrastructure things that like broadband and sewer and water and those things are really important. I appreciated that you used the word community a lot, and I just want to make sure that that we remember that people who really do things in the community are not really the government, the local governments. They may provide some of the foundation work, but it's groups like ours and and clearly for-profit businesses as well, are the ones that put plans into action. And it's been my experience in the past that so much of that decision-making happens at the state level, and it would be on how the ARC resources are deployed. And it would be great if in your discussions with the states and the local governments that you make clear when you talk about community, it's not just about the units of government and not just the development districts who also don't typically put things in action. I can say historically here in Tennessee, it is almost impossible to access ARC resources. So hopefully you can put that in your discussions and training that, nonprofits are businesses. We are job producers. We are major forces in local economies, especially in the rural areas. And like Jim said, we 55 members of Fahe are communities, and we are communities that put things in action, not just plan. So thanks for your time and for your consideration, and I appreciate it a great deal. Thank you.
No, thank you, because you have hit the nail on the head. Unfortunately, having spent a good part of my life in the nonprofit world and working with foundations and communities, so often, unfortunately, we did things in spite of government instead of with government. And so I try to be aware of that. And as I'm working, particularly now with governor's offices, to try to stress the importance, but I will certainly continue to do that, because you are absolutely correct. That is where the work gets done, where the planning gets done, and then where the boots hit the ground. So thank you to you, but to all the people that are in this session today. There is no doubt about why good things happen in communities. And you're right, it's not about the government. However, unfortunately, we
They're a really important partner.
we need the government as our partner. And so as we continue to work, it's how can we open those lines of communication and understanding better, and sometimes the urgency that we need to get something done right now, not 6 months from now. So we will just all need to continue to push and sing from the same hymnal.